In a world of Maya or delusion, where consciousness takes multiple forms and exists in and as several identities, one needs to indulge in role play and becoming this or that as an individual entity. If this be the background music of existence, then connectivity matters not just at a physical and social level, but also at a spiritual one. Spiritual alliances. Gurudev had associations with many powerful deities like Guru Nanak Dev, Guru Govind Singh, few Muslim saints, Lord Krishna, Guru Vashisht amongst others, and several manifestations of Shiv in different forms. The great Dattatreya, Sai Baba of Shirdi, the immortal Parashramji, Buddhe Baba, Oghar have been seen by several disciples in the help mode. Super energies like Mahakali, Devis Renuka, Lakshmi and Saraswati, the Ashwin Kumars, Ganpati, Hanuman and others indulged Gurudev in his mission. That is why we have titled this podcast Spiritual Alliances. The very word alliance is indicative of birds of a feather sticking together. It's about collaboration with beings who are at your level or slightly higher or lower, but on the same spiritual ladder. Naturally, being the spiritual powerhouse that he was, it was easy for Gurudev to forge alliances with other spiritual heavyweights. But because he was in human form, he had to play different roles at different times. He had a different demeanor when he was in his Guru Roop, a different disposition when he was in his Shiv Roop, and an entirely different personality when role-playing the guy next door. Superman is a superhero in a comic series, so his strange capabilities are deemed acceptable because he is fictional. But when rishis take birth on earth, stepping down from much higher astral dimensions or lokas than our current one called the Bhulok, their capabilities seem fictional to our logical yet limited minds. We might ourselves be from higher lokas, but as we forget our past, we can only believe what our senses perceive. Devi Devtas are not necessarily from the highest lokas, so they do respect and associate with their current seniors. To a listener who has no experience of this, much of what you hear will sound like fantasy. We will try to help you stretch the mind space, so do accept that there are things beyond comprehension. Giri Lalwani takes you on an odyssey of the unbelievable.
He told me what he is. I am Sarvashaktiman. सारी शक्तियां मेरे अंडर है. Like he said कि बेटा देख मैं कैसे काम करता हूँ. Like जैसे एक मिनिस्ट्री होती है, प्राइम मिनिस्टर होता है, फिनांस मिनिस्ट्री को ऑर्डर इशू कर देता है, उसको चलो फिनांस दो, और कोई डिफेंस मिनिस्ट्री को ऑर्डर इशू करता है, चलो उसको हमारे कंट्री के ऊपर प्रॉब्लम आ रही है, जाके उधर मिलिट्री को भेज दो उधर. So all departments are under prime ministers. So it's like this. All departments are under me. इधर की जैसे किसी को बच्चा देना होता है, तेरे को बेटा देना होता है, तो मैंने ब्रह्मा जी को बोला जा इसको बेटा दे दे. तेरी बहन को बेटा देना था तो मैंने ब्रह्मा जी को बोला जा बेटा दे दे. किसी को किसी का घर, किसी को जॉब नहीं मिलती है, किसी का काम नहीं चलता है, तो विष्णु जी को बोल देता हूँ कि चलो भाई इसका काम चला दे, इसकी पालना कर दे. या लक्ष्मी जी को बोल देता हूँ जाके इसका घर भर दे. तो किसी की जैसे किसी को लाइफ देनी होती है 5 साल 10 साल 15 साल, जैसे तेरी मदन लाल को लाइफ दी थी मैंने, तो फिर वो मैंने शिव जी को बोला 10 साल तक, 5 साल पहले उसको बोला मत जा, फिर 5 साल और उसकी बढ़ा दी लाइफ. तो 10 साल तो मैंने उसकी खींच ली, 5 उसको मैंने शिव जी को बोला तो नहीं जाएगा, वो शिव जी का डिपार्टमेंट है. तो ये सारे मेरे अंडर आते हैं. तो फिर जब ये शिव जी के डिपार्टमेंट का, जब यहाँ पर मैंने किसी को बोला कि शिव जी को बोला 5 साल, फिर उसकी पालना भी करनी होती है. भाई चलो लाइफ तो दे दी और उसके साथ फूड क्लोथ शेल्टर भी तो चाहिए, तो फिर वो उसके लिए फिर विष्णु जी को बुला लेता हूँ. ऐसे में बेटा वो मेरे पास डिफेंस मिनिस्ट्री में चामुंडा देवी है, किसी के ऊपर कोई अटैक होता है तो चामुंडा देवी को बोल देता हूँ, मकाली देवी को बोल देता हूँ, वो जाके प्रोटेक्ट करती है. तो ये सारे देवी देवता मेरे अंडर है. इनफैक्ट आई एम सरप्राइज कि दिस इज व्हाट He told me कि सारे देवी देवता मेरे अंडर हैं.
Puranji did seva at Gurudev's house in Gurgaon and was naturally surrounded by the aura of the sthan. He saw deities on several occasions.
हमारे उनके बिना कुछ होता नहीं. I cannot do anything. गुरुजी ने मुझे भगवान बुद्ध के दर्शन करवाए.
Wow.
जीसस क्राइस्ट, भगवान शिव, रामकृष्ण परमहंस जी, उनकी वाइफ शारदा.
And how was your experience with Bhagwan Shiv?
I went and sat on his lap.
How big? He was big?
No, like you and me.
Right.
Maybe height must be 5'10", 5'9", 9 or 5'11".
Right.
Young person about 24, 25.
Red eyes.
Very glowing face.
Okay.
Very, very handsome.
And blue in color or body?
Huh?
Body blue.
Your skin है ना हमारी. This is very light.
And you have snakes and Ganga and all of that.
जैसे थे वैसे तो नजर आए.
And he blessed you.
I sat in his lap.
And you conversed with him.
नहीं वो बस सिर्फ हाथ फेरते रहते थे.
And Jesus?
Jesus spoke.
About?
Jesus told me that you got a उनकी लैंग्वेज हमको समझ में नहीं आती. They try to speak Hindi, but in a broken way. तो he said कि गुरु बहुत महान है.
He was long haired and.
I say almost like same. 15-20% का फर्क हुआ. 15-20%. But their appearance is very, very glowing. Spiritual aura जो होता है वो strong.
Even though the topic here is the who and the who all Gurudev had working relationships with on the earthly plane, he might come off as arrogant when these statements are examined. Although the sentences may sound self-trumpeting from the mouth of a normal human being, they are not when spoken by a being who had surpassed his self-identification and ego to identify with the consciousness supreme, or to put it differently, identify with the realized Shiv Tattva or principle within. Pradeep Sethi, nicknamed Sunny, is convinced that the mighty Dattatreya helped him acquire land near Lonavla for building a Shiv temple.
I am talking to Sri Pradeep Sethi, one of Gurudev's disciples. And my question to you, Pradeep ji, is I have been to your temple with you, and I have also been to your temple without you. And I wanted to know, how did this come about?
Actually, I had no ideas or any thoughts about making any Shiva temple. It's only when I left Bombay with my family to Delhi and stayed there for a couple of years. So one day when I was meditating, so I had darshan of Dattatreya ji. You know, his tree, very nice tree. He was standing in front of the tree, a lot of luminous light. His dog was there and a cow, both were white. That was all. You know? So when I got up, I thought maybe because we are on a spiritual voyage, so we always meet Devi Devtas, right?
Right.
As others, whoever has his own journeys, they meet similar acquaintances. So that matter was over. So in Delhi, I had no program of coming back. But in a couple of years, we made a program and we came back. So when we came back, that's how I had the feeling about making a temple. So we used to go and keep going to various places, search of land, and finally we got this place. So when I went there up, there was a small Shivaling on the hill, which was already there, but it was not being attended or looked after. I sat there and I got the answer that this is the place. So we called the broker, he agreed, everything, the price was finalized. After 10 days he called up. He said, "Arey nahi, mujhe to ye dena hi nahi. I don't want to give this land. I've changed my mind." I said, "Okay, no problem." Then after a couple of months, I was doing seva on a Thursday in Mumbai. So Friday morning, I got a call. He called me from Delhi, a Kapoor family. So her name is Mrs. Kapoor. So she called me up. She said, "Arey, early in the morning today I had a dream that you have made a temple on a hill and I am there and many others are there and you are serving jalebis to everyone." Right? So moment she closed the phone, after 10 minutes I got the call from the broker. He said, "We have decided to give you the land And that's how the things went through. Yeah. Then subsequently, when I took the contractor up and all, so he saw the land and I told him that here we have to make the temple and all. So he, after seeing everything, he told me, "Arey, ये तो land बहुत अच्छा है." I said, "What? Why?" He said, "See that उनका पेड़, औदुबर का पेड़ जहाँ दत्तात्रेय जी का है." So I saw that the tree and I realized that this was the same tree which I had seen a couple of years back in that dream.
Being very fond of jalebis in my younger days, I thought I should not pass up an opportunity of talking to the jalebi lady, Swati Kapoor, who actually saw this temple in her dream years before it was constructed.
So, Swati ji, I wanted to ask you about the premonitive dream that you had several years ago about the temple to come up at Lonavala. Tell us about it.
I have been a fortunate one where Pujya Guruji appeared in my dream and identified a place, and he said, "This is going to be your new stan." But the stan didn't look like like a mandir, and it was just a shed where it was pouring a lot. And then I saw Sunny Guruji frying some jalebis. That's it. I saw. After a week, I related my dream to Punchama, and then after 2 years, my dream was manifested into true big stan.
A significant event in Gurudev's life was his camp at Renuka in Himachal Pradesh, which led to a spiritual alliance with Parashramji. The setting up of the sthan at Bairi near Renuka was an exercise in diplomacy, tact and collaboration at the highest level. Ravi Trehanji explains.
ये कहानी थोड़ी लंबी है, जितना मुझे मालूम है, जितना मुझसे शेयर किया गया था कि रेणुका परशुराम जी की माता जी थी और उस एरिया में परशुराम जी का टोटल डोमेन है, तो कोई स्पिरिचुअल पावर उस एरिया में एंटर नहीं कर सकती। जब गुरुजी पहली बार गए तो उनका सामना हुआ परशुराम जी की, और परशुराम जी 27 फुट की हाइट में उनको पहली बार मिले। अब गुरुजी से बातचीत करने के बाद, उनकी स्पिरिचुअल पावर्स ऑब्जर्व करने के बाद में भी जब सेकंड टाइम उनसे मुलाकात हुई तो उनका कद 18 फुट था। तीसरी बार जब मुलाकात हुई तो अपने नॉर्मल 9 फुट के कद में उनसे मिले। आपस में एक तरह का, जहां वो अपने आप को पूरा डोमेन समझते थे उस एरिया को, वहां उन्होंने गुरुजी को रहने की, ठहरने की इजाजत दे दी और किसी भी शिष्य को वहां जाने की इजाजत नहीं थी जब तक गुरुजी और परशुराम जी का आपस में अच्छा रिश्ता कायम नहीं हो गया।
This was a hard relationship to forge. Parashramji was a manifestation of the power of Shiv. He had knowledge of his own significance and mortality, rather immortality. Winning him over in order to forge an alliance must have been an uphill task. The sthan at Renuka that Gurudev and Parashramji started in 1980 has helped and healed thousands over the past decades. It is believed that Parashramji continues to oversee the workings of this sthan, helping fulfill their joint mission of selfless service. Let me recount an interesting but embarrassing personal anecdote. Gurudev had sent me, Subhash Sabharwal, and one more person to pay our respects at the Renuka sthan. I behaved irresponsibly, knowing full well about our connection with Parashramji. The tall wonder punished me by attacking me spiritually. I was saved by his mother, Devi Renuka, when I asked for her help. My foolishness and misadventure aside, it was probably Parashramji's alliance with Gurudev that made him restrict himself to giving me a spiritual spanking, instead of going the whole hog and annihilating me completely. When I returned to the camp, Gurudev recounted the incident looking rather unimpressed with my antics. Pradeep Sethi, on the other hand, had a more reverent attitude towards this great deity and was rewarded with a sighting.
I think it was in morning 3 or 4. Now also when I'm narrating this, all my hair are standing. I'm seeing a river or a lake, and I could see the depths and the clarity. The water was so clear. I could see the stones and the fishes inside. And from the center of the lake, 2 feet submerged in the water, wearing the khadao with the round. From the feet, from the charnas, I gradually saw the legs which were naked, and above the knees, man was standing with his hands folded, looking up. And then my eyes went to his face, and when I saw his eyes, they were so red. It was phenomenal. It was a person about 7.5, 8 feet. We have linked with Parashramji because he is the direct Shishya of Lord Shiva. This is the first vision I had.
Bindu Lalwani shares a very interesting story about Devi Renuka, blessing her with a son at Gurudev's instance. This is how the story unfolded.
So I'm talking to Bindu Lalwani, and she has been a babe in the arms of Gurudev and his wife Mataji. So Bindu, you were telling us a story which I thought was very interesting about Renuka. Please tell us how it started and what happened.
Once I was in my midterm pregnancy with my firstborn, Rahul, and Guruji took me to Renuka ji, and he made me do a parikrama around the lake. And in the middle of my parikrama, he showed me a spot where there was some water coming out. It was like a tiny little fall coming from somewhere up the mountain. So Guruji said, "Ye beta, ye Renuka maa ka jal hai. Piyo aur inse bolo, maa mujhe putra do." So I did that. And I was convinced I was going to have a son. And then few months later, when I prepared everything for a baby boy, I remember my husband's dadi telling me, "Beta, jab Guru keh dete hain, to utna hi bahut hota hai. So don't be surprised if it's a girl, and welcome her the same way you would welcome a son." And I told her very candidly and very confidently, No, Dadi, Guruji ne kaha hai, beta mango, unhone mujhe de diya hua hai. And I had a son. That's how Rahul was born.
A technical qualification here is that as a spirit enters the womb either in the 3rd or 4th month, depending on whether it is going to be a boy or a girl, Bindu's boon was very timely. Chandramani Vashisht, who became Gurudev's first disciple in Renuka, was a devotee of Parashramji and was responsible for the renovation and additional construction of temples at Renuka. He therefore became a consensus candidate for overseeing the running of the sthan there. His disciple Dineshji, who currently runs the sthan, believes and his wife swears that Parashramji often visits the sthan in disguise to observe what is going on. When the sthan was being renovated, a panther came and stayed a few meters away without harming or scaring anyone and left as the work was done. I have never heard of a panther civil engineer. Though there were many reflections of Gurudev's divinity right from childhood, the mirror never gave him a true reflection of this divinity. This realization unfolded over time and in many stages. It was triggered conclusively when Buddhe Baba formed an alliance with him and forced him to give up all the mid-level siddhis he had attained under the mentorship of Sitaramji of Dasua. The alliance with Buddhe Baba brought out the mahaguru in him. Gurudev's spiritual beginnings were humble. He was perceivably only an aspirant. He was also susceptible to spiritual attacks and victimized by them. When he was in the 5th or 6th standard, someone had black magic performed on him, making him very sick for an extended period of time, which could have been 2 or 3 years. He was cured at the temple of Baba Balaknath through Jal. This may have been the predestined trigger for his interest in the subject of spirituality. As difficult as this is to understand, it is far more difficult to explain and justify how a man like Gurudev, who in his younger days was cured by Baba Balaknath, went on to evolve far beyond. I guess it is similar to the fact that every PhD was once taught by a school teacher who at best was a graduate. Something similar happened with Buddha, whose teacher of earlier years later became his disciple. Like many saints before him, Gurudev's evolution had many triggers at different stages that catapulted him from a mundane life to an exalted one. Bhrigu Samhita mentions another alliance that Gurudev forged with the Ashwin Kumars, who are known as the physicians of the gods. The Ashwin twins helped Gurudev with special healings. Gurudev lived multidimensionally and in multiple forms. He lived both physically and ethereally at the same time. His consciousness oscillated between his human existence as well as his spirit one. Not to forget, his divine one. Maybe one day Gurudev's believe it or not will outdo Ripley's. Punchu was a very young member of the Mahaguru's flock. She was a disciple's daughter who later became another disciple's daughter-in-law when she married one. Her experiences do not fall into the category of easily believable either.
This is how the dream was like. I'm going through a tunnel, and at the end of the tunnel there was light. He was wearing a jeans and a t-shirt, and he was twirling car keys on his finger. And it was a place high up. There were no clouds. I could see, when I looked down, I could see red-colored pipes crisscrossing each other, and we were standing on nothing. And then samne se I saw three ladies come. One lady was wearing a red sari, and she was okay. She was fair. She was not very beautiful, and she was she had a center parting, and she was wearing gold jewelry with that. And the lady who was standing behind her had a side parting and long silky black hair. She was wearing a black sari with golden, Ambiya design, and she was sexy looking. And there was another lady behind her. She was wearing a peach sari with gold border. And those three ladies came forward. I saw them glide. They did not walk. In small steps they glided. And three of them, they did namaskar to Guruji, and they said, Bhagwan, aap yahan, hame bula liya hota. And Guruji smiled and said, Punchu ko yahan leke aaya hu. And then I saw a glass, like you see a steel glass. It was a bigger and broader glass made of gold. It came out of the air, and it had a white liquid in that. So Guruji told me, have it. Nobody was holding it. It just came out of thin air. And I drank it. I remember the taste. It was, you cannot describe the taste because there is no language, no words, I can't say it was sweet or it was not sweet, And I had one. I finished it. I gulped it down, and Guruji said, you want another one? I said, yes. So another glass came out of thin air, and I drank that. And Guruji just smiled. So I asked him, Guruji, why are you not having? And Guruji looked down far below. It was like we are standing at the top of a mountain, and far below I could see a train, a moving train. And Guruji said, I'm going to eat that, what that lady has made for me. So in that train, that lady has made, she had a tiffin in her hand, aluminium tiffin. And in the tiffin there were 2 thande parathe and white chane. And Guruji said, Beta, she has made this with a lot of love for me. So I'm going to eat that.
Who did you think these three fancy ladies in your vision or dream sort of symbolize?
No, I understood. She was Lakshmi ji, and Parvati ji was an eye-opener because I've never seen anybody like that. But now I remember the sari, it was like a snake kind of thing, clinging to her. And last one was Saraswati ji.
Seems right out of a religious fantasy movie, doesn't it? The trouble is that we are restricted in our perception of reality by our sense of limitation. But my Guru Bhais and I have been exposed to many such experiences for us to not believe in such limitations. Raji Sharma's vision of receiving the blessings of Shankar in Gurudev's presence, my own experience of meeting Ram, Lakshman and Sita, Darius's vision of Jesus, the presence of Sai Baba of Shirdi in many of our experiences, made us disbelieve in the meaning of words like impossible, unbelievable, unfathomable, etc. Gurudev's alliances with deities like Badrinath, Jwalaji, a few Muslim saints, and our exposure to them taught us how to see and not just look. Transcending perception can widen the horizon of the mind. Many people have been led to the sthan by other saints and deities like Baba Muktanand, Sai Baba of Shirdi, Ganpati, and probably many others whom I may not be aware of. Siddh Gurus don't need to acquire the tendencies of collaboration. Their philosophy encompasses this concept. Helping each other's spiritual family is a common task. F.C. Sharmaji was not prone to bewilderment. Decades of exposure to spiritual experiences made him see things as a matter of fact. Here is another story for all to chew on and try to digest.
तो वो बाद में हमें पता लगा कि गुरु जी जो नेता जी को दिन में बताते थे आज रात को आपने ऐसा ऐसा करना है, हाँ, वो सुबह आके गुरु जी को रिपोर्ट करते थे। ओके, रिपोर्ट करते थे तो पूछते थे कि क्या हुआ रात में, तो वो रिपोर्ट करना। जहाँ तक बाद में पता चला कि गुरु जी उनको ट्रेनिंग के साथ साथ में देवताओं के जो देवता हैं उनको मंत्र देते थे और उनसे उनकी मुलाकात कराते थे।
देवताओं को के मंत्र देके देवताओं से मुलाकात कराते हैं। जैसे कौन से देवता?
जैसे हनुमान जी हैं तो उनसे मुलाकात कराएं, उनके बराबर करने की उनकी कोशिश करी।
I may not be a direct witness to Gurudev's alliance with Hanuman, but I have been the recipient of the grace of Mangal on more than one occasion. Hanuman is considered to have the qualities of the planet Mangal, and that is why Tuesday is considered to be a day when he is prime and worshipped. An invisible force gave me a mantra connected to Mangal and showed me its usage in the vision state. On another occasion, I was teleported to a strange-looking mountain and told that the energy of Mangal manifested there. My companion on this journey was my spiritual associate Nitin Gadekar. He and I received boons from this power that manifested as gifts out of thin air. Conjecture perhaps, but I feel this indulgence was probably due to Gurudev's alliance with this mighty force. Pradeep Sethi shares a few glimpses of his experiences.
So Pradeep ji, I wanted to ask you about an incident you had told me several years ago about how you had a darshan of Shirdi ke Sai Baba and how he was of help.
I started Seva at Deep Jyot after shifting from Jwala. Now for 6-7 months, we started Seva and we started with 5 people coming on a Thursday and gradually it increased to a few hundred people. And after 7-8 months, the people who were staying around my place were not finding this to be a very positive, because a lot of people used to come and langars were going on. So one day in the evening I was doing seva. Those days I used to sit down inside the hall and I was doing seva and Sangat was sitting and some were sitting outside. So there were about 15-20 people who came. And they were all educated people from all the locality that this is the nuisance is going on here and we will not allow this to happen. So they gave me an ultimatum. They said, we will not allow you to do this. I was very quiet. I didn't know. I was dumbstruck also. I didn't know what to do. All my life, if any time I had any problems, I had the privilege, or my Guruji always listened to me. I used to pick up the call, talk to him, and he would guide and we would follow accordingly. Now I still continued my seva. After 1 hour, when my seva was over, I went to my room and I'm sitting on my bed. I'm very dejected. I said, I'm serving my master. Why these people have this objection? And all of a sudden I'm sitting and in front of me I see Shiddi Wala Sahib was sitting in a green, he was wearing a green pheta, you know, young robe, small beard, very black one. He looked at me. He said, "Oi, तू घबरा गया? मेरे समय तो लोगों ने मुझे पत्थर भी मारे." Then there was a pause. Then he's telling me, "Ja, आज के बाद कोई नहीं आएगा." And that's about 30 years.
So he told you this because people were objecting to your running a sthan there. Is that correct?
Yeah, sure. They wanted, that was what they said is a nuisance, Thursday, there's so much of sound. Actually, there was nothing much of that.
I remember a conversation you and I had several years ago when Gurudev had physically passed on.
Okay.
You had attended the Chautha and you said you saw some amazing experience. You had an amazing experience there.
Yeah.
So can you tell me that?
Yeah. And we were all sitting there. I still remember it was noon time, 4 o'clock, 3:30, 4 o'clock. And so many people were sitting there. And then, there were few hundreds of people sitting. All looked tapasvis, All were like पुराने पिछले काफी अरसों के जो ऋषि मुनि हैं. तो फ्रंट रो में जो बैठे थे वो थे शिरडी वाले साईं बाबा. वेरी इन माय सिटिंग. सोते तो मैं कहाँ मुझे गुरुजी ले जाते हैं, पर ये तो बैठे हुए मुद्रा में मैंने देखा उनको.
With your eyes open?
With my eyes open, yeah. My eyes open. So it always, I was wondering, kya hai, what is it? And this thought was there all the time. And after 6 months, one night he came and he gave me his own greatness. He always clarifies if there is anything doubt in my mind. मैं कहते हैं, ओए, जब डॉक्टर मरते हैं तो कौन आते हैं? जब व्यापारी मरते हैं तो कौन आते हैं? इसी तरह जब हम जाते हैं तो सारे ये जो हमारे जिनके साथ हमारा स्पिरिचुअल लिंक है वो आते हैं. So we clarified.
Perceived villain, established pandit, undefeated king, a disciple of Shiv, a central figure of the Ramayana, a rainbow of a man was Ravan. I feel like calling him Chachaji or uncle. If you are wondering why, then listen on. Rajpal Sekri reports.
क्योंकि ये दशहरे के रावण जलने के बाद ओपन किया था गुरुजी ने, जब मुझे कहने लगे कि आज मैं बेड पर नहीं सोऊंगा बेटा. गुरुजी, आज आप बेड पर क्यों नहीं सोगे? बेटा, आज मेरे भाई की मृत्यु हुई है, मैं जमीन पर सोऊंगा. मैं गुरुजी, आपका भाई कौन? रावण. मैं कहा, जी आपका भाई कैसे होगा? भगवान शिव का है वो शिष्य और मैं भी उनका शिष्य, तो हम गुरु भाई हुए ना बेटा.
Gurudev invited me to his camp at Srinagar in Uttarakhand. From there, he took me to Badrinath, where he asked me to go in alone and hug the deity and say, "Dear brother, I have come to give you a jappi," which means bear hug. I did not know how to interpret his reference to me being a brother to such a worshipped entity. To cut a long story short, I walked right in and fumbled and mumbled with what I had to say. But this was a lesson in Atmic equality. It took over a decade for my bewilderment to turn into understanding. Today, that understanding makes me realize the concept that no one at the core is either lesser or greater than another. I sometimes accuse myself of becoming a spiritual communist, and one of the first at that. Gurudev asked people to go to a few temples and places of prayer to pay their respects. It was almost like an introduction to those powers. You can call it spiritual PR. Gaggu shares his unique habit.
हाँ, ये जरूर था कि जैसे अब कभी मैं तो कोई तरह उनके साथ गया नहीं, 2-3 बार ही गया हूँ। जैसे कहीं श्रीनगर का ही एपिसोड है, हम श्रीनगर गए थे तो पर्टिकुलरली ये बोला, इवन हमें हजरत बल भी देखने के लिए भेजा, शंकराचार्य का मंदिर भी देखने के लिए गए। ना खुद हजरत बल में अंदर गए, ना शंकराचार्य के मंदिर में गए। हमें ये जरूर बोल दिया, वहां जाना ऐसे पूजा करना और आ जाना, खुद नहीं गए। ये जरूर है, कार्तिक पूर्णिमा को गुरु नानक देव जी का बर्थडे जब होता है तो उस दिन कोशिश करते थे पब्लिक से ना मिलो, अपने ध्यान में लग जाओ। ऐसे ही भगवान कृष्ण के जी जन्मदिन पे भी थोड़ा बहुत मिलते थे, बाकी टाइम पे प्रसाद बना के कहते थे पढ़वा लो। और वो क्या पूजा पाठ नहीं, मतलब अपना क्या वो करते थे मेडिटेशन, वो ऑलमोस्ट लेट जाते थे, चादर ले लेते थे तो बस। उसके बाद कभी 3 घंटे बाद उठना, 4 घंटे बाद उठना, या आधे घंटे बाद उठ जाना, वो उनका अपना क्राइटेरिया था। वो क्योंकि उनकी अपनी पावर, उनका सिस्टम वो जानते थे, हमें नहीं इस चीज का आइडिया।
Oghar was another one of Gurudev's best kept secrets. People have seen him on occasion, but hardly face to face. I have had the fortune of seeing him 3 or 4 times at close quarters. While in human form, he lived in the area around Hardwar, which was his spiritual domain. He expired several years ago. He had a naughty streak and was like a testometer for many of Gurudev's disciples. Gaggu continues.
आप जानते हैं ऑगर कौन था? कभी आपने देखा है ऑगर?
नहीं, मैंने नहीं देखा। वो बोलते जरूर थे कि वो उनको बतला जाते थे कि गुरु ये ऐसे है, ऐसे है।
मतलब
कि किसी के बारे में बतला जाते थे।
तो गुरुदेव कहते थे कि ऑगर आके मुझे बता के
हाँ, बतला देते थे। अब जैसे कई अननोन चीजें हमारे बारे में भी, हमें भी झटका लगता था, यार ये काम तो हम करके इनको कहाँ से पता लग गया, ये कहाँ से टांग अड़ा, और उनको पता हो जाता था कि आज ये गलत करके आए या क्या करके आए।
Oghar could appear in different forms, read your mind, take your tests, and snitch to Gurudev, whom he treated as his senior. In truth, he also protected our spiritual family when required. If you remembered him and asked for his help, it was not far from coming. Gurudev's sisters reveal a secret they themselves don't understand. I am sure this is more than what poor Oghar bargained for. Here they come.
को किसी ने बताया कि नहीं ऑगर बता देता है। मैंने कहा ऑगर कौन है? तो मैंने पापा जी से बोला, मैंने कहा ऑगर कौन है? वो हमारा क्या लगता है? तो कहते तुम्हारा भतीजा लगता है। तो मैंने बच्चों को बोला भतीजा लगता है तो डंडे मार के सुधार लेंगे अगर ये चुगली करेगा।
I think in a strange way he was almost like a class prefect. Often he would come to test us and hand over our answer papers to Gurudev. Many have experienced him without recognizing him. I've had many experiences with him that were both unique and inspiring. The last one was at Dehradun, where I extended him a mental invitation to the opening of the sthan at Astral. He came, greeted me from a distance, but did not enter the temple that we had established there. He had prasad, spoke authoritatively to the sevadars present, and then walked out of the gate. When some of the young disciples followed to see where he went, he had just disappeared. The power of disappearing, appearing in different forms or bhais was one of his many capabilities. F.C. Sharma ji gives you his version of the man, deity, disciple called Oghar.
तो ऑगर कौन है और उनकी रिलेशनशिप गुरुदेव के साथ क्या थी?
ऑगर शायद आप ने शिव पुराण पढ़ा, उसमें ऑगर आता है कि शिव को भी एक दफा ऑगर बनना पड़ा था कि जब शक्ति चली गई और अब शक्ति को दोबारा अर्जित करना है तो उनको भी शमशान में जाना पड़ा था ओघड़ जिनका नाम होता है वो तकरीबन शमशान में रहते हैं और वो अपना वही भजन करते हैं, वही जो कुछ मिलता है वही खाते हैं। तो ये मैनिफेस्टेशन शिव की ही है कि गुरुजी कहते थे कि ओघड़ है, वो मेरा ही शिष्य है, तुम्हारा भाई है, लेकिन कहते जी उनसे आपको मिला, आप मिलाते तो है नहीं उनसे, कि चलो आप हरिद्वार जाएंगे, मैं मिला दूंगा आपको। हरिद्वार जाते थे, गुरुजी वहाँ से बीच में से गायब हो जाते थे, फिर लौट के आते थे, गुरुजी आप कहाँ चले गए? वो ओघड़ आया था ना, उन्होंने मिलने गया सी में। गुरुजी हमने तो देखा नहीं। क्या देखोगे उसको, वो 6.5 फुट ऊंचा है, उसकी आंखें लाल रहती हैं, वो शमशान में ही रहता है। वो ओघड़ जो है, ये शुरू जब हुआ तो गुरुजी क्या किया करते थे कि जैसे मैं हूँ, ये हैं मेरे और गुरु भाई हैं, उनकी क्रियाकलाप वो सारी रिकॉर्ड करके रखता था और गुरुजी को बताता था। तो फिर गुरुजी क्या करते थे, मैंने ओघड़ ने क्या भी, और देख तेरा चेला की करता पिया है। फिर सभी घबराने लगे कि ये गुरुजी को सब पता चल जाता है। एक दफ़ा हमारे वो अपने गुरु भाई सीताराम जी थे, उनको एक दफ़ा गुरुजी ने कहा, अरे बस की करता पिया से तू? कि नहीं जी गुरुजी, मैं तो कुछ नहीं कर रहे थे। तू की समझना, मैं उत्थे नहीं आ सकता? मैं वहाँ भी आ सकता हूँ। फिर उनसे पूछा, फिर किसी और की शिकायत करनी गुरुजी ने, तो गुरुजी ने कहना मैंने ओघड़ दस दिता है। फिर सभी डरते थे कोई भी गलत काम करने में गुरुजी को पता चल जाएगा इसके थ्रू।
Amidst various conversations, I picked up that Oghar was actually a form of Shiv, minus the Shakti. This manifestation of the single Mukhi or single form of Shiv is not the same as the manifestation of the Grihast Ashram Shiv like Gurudev was. While in human form, Oghar treated Gurudev as his senior and bowed to him whenever he visited Hardwar and sometimes at Gurgaon. Ravi Trehanji shares an opinion.
But Oghar accepted Gurudev as his teacher?
As his Guru Bhai मानते थे।
Huh?
हाँ, as his Guru Bhai, senior Guru Bhai तो मानते थे।
Senior Guru Bhai. Did Oghar have a name?
He did have a name, मुझे इस वक्त ध्यान में नहीं है। He had a name. वो काफी देर तक हरिद्वार में रहे थे। In a physical form, he lived in Hardwar for a long time.
But does he still live?
Yeah, I think he's left the world.
He's left the world.
He's left the world.
The concept of Oghar is unique, strange, and intriguing. Photos of this form show him with a beard, a ferocious expression, holding a trishul in the left hand. The Grihast Shiv holds it in his right. Evolved and advanced Aghodis worship this form of Shiv and aspire to acquire his qualities, and in the final analysis, become the manifestation of this form. After a few opinions and sightings of the man, we will talk about him as an energy force. Gurudev's wife, daughter, sister, and many others claim to have seen him. Let's start the Oghar excavation with Mataji.
आपने ओघड़ का नाम सुना कभी?
हरिद्वार में ये जब जाते थे ना हरिद्वार में, तब हरिद्वार में इनके पास जीवित आता था।
क्या वो इंसान था कि कोई ताकत का नाम था?
इंसान का रूप सामने वहाँ पर आता था।
कोई इनका संबंध था उस ताकत से?
जब संबंध जरूर होगा तो मिलने आता था। जब ओघड़ को देखा है मैंने एक शारीरिक रूप में उसको देखा है। आर्यन के रूप में हरिद्वार में ही देखा मैंने जी। सारे शिष्य इनके पास आए, इन्होंने सबको पीछे पीछे डाले मारने से, जाओ तुम। रात को आरती होनी थी, मैं इनके पास आके खड़ी हो गई। तब मैंने सोचा हुआ था कि ये कहते हैं ओघड़ आता है, अब मैं देखूंगा कौन सा ओघड़ आता है, ये देखने। इन्होंने मेरे को बहुत कहा तू जा आगे होके देख ले। गंगा में बात किनारे के पास बैठ, एक आदमी आया बेटे, उसने खद्दर का पटका सिर पर बांधा हुआ, खद्दर का कुर्ता है, पजामा खद्दर का, इस लिबास में सफेद, तो वो पहना हुआ है। पहन के आया, वो नीचे बैठा है, झुका है, झुकते हुए मैंने देखा है। और ये इन्होंने बताया कि उसने तेरे भी पांव हाथ लगाए पर मुझे एहसास नहीं हुआ। मैंने इनको प्रणाम करते हुए देखा, झुकते हुए बैठा। उसके बाद फिर उठ के खड़ा भी हुआ, खड़ा वो चल पड़ा, ये भी इसको पीछे चल पड़े। विद इन सेकंड ना इनका पता चला था ना उसका पता चला। इतने में सारे ये शिष्य, शंभू था, पप्पू की डैड, ये संतोष वगैरह, सुरेंद्र वगैरह, ये सारे भाग गया। माता जी गुरु जी कहाँ है, गुरु जी कहाँ है? उनका अभी एक आदमी आया था, पता नहीं वो साथ लेके ये सारे पीछे का पता नहीं, दोनों ही पता नहीं कहाँ का, दोनों का ही नहीं पता चला। टाइम से बाहर हरिद्वार गए, मल्होत्रा भी साथ था और भी काफी लोग थे। तो वहाँ पर हम उधर गए थे, हरिद्वार के पीछे कौन लक्ष्मण झूला, वहाँ पर गए ऋषिकेश, उधर गए। वो जब झूला पार कर गए ना, काफी गर्मी थी, हम बैठने की जगह देख रहे थे। अच्छी जगह बनी हुई थी, पक्के घाट बना हुआ था, आगे भी नहाने को जगह थी, बैठने की जगह थी। वहाँ पर कुछ साधु लोग लेटे हुए थे। तो उधर बीच वाली लंबी जो घाट बनी हुई जगह बैठने की, वहाँ पर एक आदमी लेटा हुआ, सफेद चादर में रखी, वो लेटा हुआ, ये उसके पाँव की तरफ बैठ
गुरुदेव,
हाँ, पाँव की तरफ बैठ गए। और मैं बैठने लगी, कहते कहते तुम जाओ नहाओ, उधर लेडीज चले जाओ अलग, वहाँ पर जाके नहाओ। मैं चले, इतने में सुरेंद्र की मैसेज आई, वो आके कहते गुरु जी यहाँ बहुत गर्मी है। मैं आपने कहा कोई ये मोहित था छोटा सा, मैं इसको लिटा दूं जहाँ पर, ये कहते हैं लिटा, और खुद बैठ गई, बातें करने लगी। तो उसने थोड़े से अपनी आंख निकाली, उसको ऐसे देखा, उसने देखा कि उसकी बड़ी बड़ी लाल आंखें थी।
जो आदमी सो रहा था। किसने देखा? शोभा जी।
तो वो घबरा गई, ये कहते तू जा, मैं बैठा। वो चली गई, सारे शिष्य नहाने गए हुए थे, उन्होंने कहा जा तू भी नहा ले। फिर गुरुजी और वो बच्चा था कि दूर से सबने देखा वही बुजुर्ग वहाँ पर नीचे इनके चरणों में बैठा है, कुछ बात की है। उसके बाद जब आए तो नहीं था, इन्होंने उसने चरणों पे हाथ रखा, इन्होंने उस बच्चे के सिर पे हाथ रखा, सबने देखा, उसको बैठा देखा है, शक्ल नहीं देखी किसी ने भी। इतने में सुरेंद्र जब पानी से निकला ना, तो ये आए इधर, तो वो आदमी गायब था। सारे कहने लगे गुरु जी ये कौन था? कहते कोई आया था। फिर कहने गुरु जी ओघड़ था। कहते हाँ ओघड़ आया था। कहते हमने उससे मिलना था। कहते अब वो चला गया।
Renu ji, Gurudev's daughter, shares her own Aghorian tale.
और आपकी ओघड़ से मुलाकात हुई?
हाँ जी, ओघड़, हाँ ओघड़ का वो तो सुबह का ही टाइम था, दिन का। ओघड़ का सुना हुआ था हमने, वो भी ऐसे कैसे होते हैं। शोभा आंटी कई बार बात करते थे और उनका ऐसे हुआ कि ओघड़ के साथ उन्होंने जो काम कहा ओघड़ से हो गया। मेरा कोई इंटरेस्ट नहीं था इसमें, लेकिन एक सोच थी कि ओघड़ पहरा होता है स्थान पे ओघड़ का, और उनकी ड्यूटी दे के जाते हैं, जब टूर पे जाते हैं तो वो बाकी टाइम वो देखते हैं, रक्षा होती है। तो सुनी हुई बातें थी, कभी देखा नहीं था ऐसा। इतनी हाइट, मतलब वो स्टोर रूम उनके यहाँ पे आ रहा था और फेस नहीं दिखा मुझे, लेकिन मैंने सिर्फ ऐसे ध्यान गया और ऊपर तक देखा तो मतलब मेरी एकदम से कि ये क्या है, इतना लंबा आदमी तो मैंने नहीं देखा कभी भी, और ये कैसा आदमी है। ऊपर से फेस नहीं दिख रहा, ऐसे पट्टी डाली हुई और ऐसे पीछे जो किया होता है वाइट, प्योर वाइट पूरा, और लुंगी जैसा पहना हुआ था, लुंगी और कुर्ता हो सकता है उसके ऊपर। मेरे तो हाइट पे ही ध्यान गया, शक्ल नहीं दिखी बिल्कुल भी, और रंग भी नहीं दिखा, कुछ नहीं, बस एक इतनी ऊपर तक बस मैंने नजर की, आंखें भी नहीं दिखी, कुछ भी नहीं दिखा, बस ये कि इतना लंबा आदमी है, 20-25 फीट। अब बाद में सोचो तो कितनी हाइट, उस टाइम तो मुझे लगा क्या चीज़ है, और स्कूल टाइम में मैं 8th 9th में होंगी मैं, अरे ये क्या है,
क्या कर रहे थे?
कौन? वो सिर्फ खड़े हुए दिखे, मेरी हालत ख़राब हो गई। उसके बाद मैंने मम्मी को बताया, तो मम्मी ने, तब फ़ोन तो नहीं होते थे जी, डैडी जब आए तो डैडी ने कहा कुछ भी नहीं, ऑगड़ था। और फिर मुझे कहता है, अरे तू तो शेर की बेटी है ना। डैडी ने कहा कि तू कुछ भी नहीं हुआ ना, देखा तो क्या हो गया, देखा तो कुछ हुआ। मैंने कहा नहीं। मम्मी ने कहा ऑगड़ होगा तू, ठीक है।
Most people who saw Oghar did so by accident unless he wanted to be seen and met. His sense of humor bordered on the sinister. Call it naughty if you will. Baggaji got a taste of it when Oghar secretly visited his electronic store in Hamirpur in the form of an old villager covered in a shawl, looking as rustic can. He kept asking Baggaji about the prices of this and the prices of that. And when a potential lady customer walked in, our old friend kept interrupting till Baggaji lost his nerve and yelled at him with a few mild swear words. The old man left thereafter. But when Baggaji visited Gurgaon to meet Gurudev on Shivratri, Gurudev taunted him about the encounter to the amusement of all of us present in the room. Poor Baggaji had been tested by Oghar and failed by Gurudev. And then there is me, who claims to have seen him twice, interacted twice more, and as I recount the encounters, you are all in for a strong cup of coffee, maybe tea. Gurudev had told me that I could remember Oghar if I needed help. He said he is your brother and he will respond. My first encounter with Oghar took place at Gurgaon. One of Gurudev's favorites, Raji Sharma, had come to pay him a midnight visit. All the sevadars were strangely asleep and Gurudev asked me to prepare tea. I knew how to boil water, but the process between doing that and converting it into tea was completely alien to me. I had put a pot of water to boil and then thought, let me ask Oghar. I did. I did it in my mind. What happened next was uncanny. I received a clear instruction to halve the water in the pot. I did. Then I was shown where the tea masala was kept through indications flashing in my mind. This voice guided me all through, and finally when I served the tea, Gurudev remarked that it was delicious. I was the excuse. Oghar made the tea, and both Gurudev and Raji loved it. I tasted the tea that was left over and admitted that I had never sipped better tea before. Maybe Oghar could look at tea making as a future part-time career. On another occasion, I saw a strawberry salesman dressed like a simple villager, waving at me from over 100 feet away, across the road. I was sitting in my car and there was no way one could look through a windscreen 100 feet away and recognize the person seated inside. This person crossed the junction and came to my car. I was not in the mood to bite into strawberries, but grudgingly bought a box. He demanded 16 or 17 rupees for it. I paid him 20 and asked him to keep the change. He told me that he had been looking for me for many days because he had seen me in his dream and now had finally found me. I felt a chill run down my spine as I knew there was something fishy about this encounter. He wished me the attainment of plenty of wealth. I thanked him. He walked away. I turned around to catch a glimpse of him a few seconds later, but the man was gone. He had just disappeared. It was not possible for him to do that, and how this happened is a mystery to me. Gurudev chuckled when I recounted the story, and I knew this man had to be Oghar. Gurudev's wife Mataji had to make a trip to her maiden home in Ludhiana. Gurudev asked Subhash Sabharwal and me to accompany her. After arriving in Ludhiana, Subhash and I walked to a corner shop after dinner. We were followed by a drunk wheeling a cycle. After we had bought what we wanted, Subhash and I turned around, and as we did, we saw this man standing in our path. I would have passed this encounter off as an unsavory experience, but this man was smiling at us and then began repeating the mantra that I was reciting mentally. I could smell that this was no mere drunk. He circled the house all night and left only when dawn broke. It was Oghar on sentinel duty protecting the lady called Mataji. The concept of family and friends at a physical level gets translated to alliances at a spiritual level. Evolved spirits become guides to their descendants and those whom they have mentored in past lives. Highly evolved ethereals respond to those who worship and remember them. Gurudev indicated that he had to keep in touch with other evolved greats as part of his spiritual duties and would attend astral meetings in order to make joint decisions about matters meant to be solved by these alliances. The essence of these alliances was not social bonding and emotional connects, but dutiful cooperation in very matter-of-fact ways. To conclude, let me add some tadka in Urdu. तमन्ना दर्द दिल की हो तो कर खिदमत फकीरों की, तमन्ना दर्द दिल की हो तो कर खिदमत फकीरों की, नहीं मिलता ये गौहर बादशाहों के खजीनों में. गौहर means pearls and खजीनों में means treasury of kings. नहीं मिलता ये गौहर बादशाहों के खजीनों में.